Very good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, on behalf of Amity University, I welcome each one of you to the webinar series of Amity University, Amalgamating Academia with Industry. We have been joined by Robert Rubinstein, founder chairman, TBLI GROUP. TBLI is the world's leading authority and network on ESG and impact investing 2.0 model. Today, Mr. Robert Robinson is going to talk on a very informative topic, Investing 2.0, Sustainable Investments and its importance in transforming economies to benefit all. Ladies and gentlemen, as you all know, to get the business communities to participate in an economy which takes into account people and the environment, and not just profit only, social, sustainable, and impactful investments and ventures shine all the way. Right investment decisions made today will have thoughtful impact for future. During the turbulent times, it becomes even more important to have investment with deeper thinking and planning. Sustainable investment is the need of an hour. It is also about investing in progress and recognizing that companies solving the world's biggest challenges can be best positioned to grow. It's the proud moment to have an eminent luminary and founder of TBLI GROUP. Before I invite Sir formally to address, let me quickly take you all to his brief bio sketch. Robert J. Rubinstein is an integral thought leader, social entrepreneur, and the founder and driving force behind TBLI Triple Bottom Line Investing Group, a group that specializes in environmental, social governance, ESG, and impact investing using triple bottom line principles. He's an inspirational global thought leader in impact investing. His mission, spearheaded by the organization Triple Bottom Line Group, is to create an inclusive value-based economy. To aim is to maximize invest flows through sustainable initiatives by showing the opportunities in triple bottom line investing offers to investors. TBLI is a concept that Rubinstein pioneered, which puts forward the notion that a truly sound investment is one that provides not just financial rewards, but social and environmental ones as well. For more than 25 years, TBLI Group has built the ecosystem for the impact investing and ESG community through advisor, education, and networking services. TBLI Group's signature event, TBLI Conference, is the longest running and largest global forum to bring together investors, asset managers, and thought leaders in sustainable finance for networking, peer-to-peer learning, and finding new business opportunities. It has covered more than 30 times across Europe, North America, Asia, and Latin America. Among numerous initiatives, TBLI has partnered with SWIFT, ABP, Pension Fund, NYSE, and many more projects for carbon disclosure, etc. Mr. Rubinstein is member of the Advisor Board of Ethical Markets, member of Advisor Board INSA, member of Advisor Board BNP, and also owns to his credit several publications, TBLI, Building a Global Communities for Value-Based Investors, How to Achieve 10x Returns with Soulful Investing, Impact Investing Offers Opportunity for Wealth Managers, Exclusive Perspective, ESG and Impact Investing to Kill New Killer Apps. It is a proud moment to have Mr. Rubinstein, who is going to speak on a very informative topic, sustainable finance and its impact. Over to you, Mr. Rubinstein.
Thank you, Professor Thapliel, and thank you very much for Amity University for hosting this and for bringing such a large group of people together. I'll try to cover all of the subjects, and I will answer any questions that you might have. So I'm going to start the presentation. I'll try to take you through 25 years of ESG and impact, what has happened, what we're trying to do, and what has the progress been made, and what are still the challenges going forward. So for those of you who are not familiar with TBLI, my wife likes to say we make dreams come true, but we're not in cosmetics. Our work is mainly to educate, ultimately change the financial system to have it work for all, not just a small group of investors, and that money should be used to improve the society and the environment, as well as provide a financial return. So our work has always been to educate investment allocators, investors, service providers about sustainable investment and help them to execute once they're convinced. But education is number one priority. Then you can move into execution. So what I'll cover today: definitions, background, where are we, where do we want to be, what has been achieved, the forces pushing it forward, sustainable investment, and the consequences, and what are the opportunities, particularly for the Asian Pacific region. So how investors look at sustainable investment is very much determined by two issues. Do they see it only as a risk, or do they see it as an opportunity, or both? This is pretty much how the financial sector works. They're driven only by risk and opportunity, and you need to understand that clearly. They're not, they don't have a specific moral code. And here are some definitions of what is ESG, or extra financial investing. Some you've talked about people, planet, profit, social equality, environmental, social equity, environmental equality, and prosperity. What are the definition that we use is very much the last one, is that while you're making, oh, I'm sorry about that. While you're making profit, are you maintaining, worsening, or improving the social environmental balance? Because if you are maintaining the social environmental balance, or actually improving it, 99% all worsen the social environmental balance. All companies do that without thinking about it, because they're not paying for those externalities. But if you're maintaining or actually improving, that means you have an incredibly resource efficient company. You use very little water, you use very little materials, you use very little energy, you produce very little CO2, you get very few fines. You also spend much less money in attracting the best and brightest and keeping them. So ultimately, you are much, much more profitable and resilient, and your governance is exceptional. All of that leads to higher profitability and ultimately higher value. So fundamentally, it's about a business model that gives you resilience to withstand any bumps in the roads like a pandemic. The challenges we face is not that people fundamentally don't want to do this. Challenge is it's ignorance. People believe that you make money any way you can, abuse, child labor, don't pay fines, waste water, waste energy, all of these things that you're not paying for. And then, you know, that's the model, but that's basically an issue of ignorance. So that's the challenge that we've been facing: how to convince people that this is in their interest, and how to get buy-in about sustainable investment. That's really the challenge. We've always focused on the three most important things. If you want to get people convinced, whether it's your child to tell them to clean their room or get anything else, you have to align, showing them the self-interest, show them the opportunity, where can they invest, and most important, show them the money flows. The financial sector is very much like a car accident. You know, when a car accident happens, a few people look to what happened, and then which attracts a bigger crowd and a bigger crowd and a bigger. That's the financial sector. They look at where the money flows are going, even if they're not interested. And that attracts more money flows, which attracts more money flows, which attracts more money flows. And those are the three things that we focus in changing the behavior and getting the financial sector to embrace sustainable investment. This is the myth that most of the financial sector, whether it's in India or New York or London, they all believe impact is a charity. There are zero returns. There are no deals. Let me just move this over here. It's money losing. There's no scale. It's too risky, bad management, and no track record. That's what you hear all the time. It's not a professional financial way of managing money. However, oops, sorry. If we look at the investment myths, where all investment managers always hit their benchmark, a lie. Most never do. Most can't even beat the index. Private equity funds who claim they will earn 30%, another lie. Most of them don't even get into double digits. And hedge funds always earn 30%. These are massive lies. I mean, these are Trump lies on a galactic scale, because they give the impression, well, the traditional financial managers, financial sector, we always make money. And that impact stuff never does. And these are much larger myths than the impact myths. They are equally, both of these lists are just myths. They're not true. They're not based in fact. You as a university operate from fact, not fiction. So what I also heard over and over and over again in the last 25 years since we've been doing this work is that ESG data is not good enough. ESG data is not good enough. It's not good enough. Over and over again. I was at the FTSE, the London Stock Exchange. They kept shouting, ESG data is not good enough, over and over again. And I stood up and asked, how come you always say that? You never say that the financial data is worse. Because if you look at all of the scandals we've had, Madoff, Parmalat, WorldCom, Enron, Lehman Brothers, Adelphi, Arthur Andersen, Tyco, Healthco, LIBOR, $350 trillion. All of these dwarf anything of failures of ESG, anything. We've had the largest financial crisis several years ago that nearly collapsed the world economy. No one said a word. Hey, you know, you guys have to do a better job on financial data. So until we start addressing the issue that financial data is far worse than ESG data, I'm not going to even address that type of silliness. We have to have the same robust professionality toward financial data as people are asking for ESG data. And if you look at the facts, there's never been a major company that went bankrupt on bad ESG data. In fact, if you look at the BP oil spill, it was the ESG analysts that predicted there was going to be problems because BP spent 8% less on health and safety. So this is another myth. The difference is that the financial sector doesn't seem to be bothered by it as long as they're making their commissions. So this is the really fundamental driver that is driving interest in sustainable investment. If you look at China's growth, which they claim 8% a year, China will reach US consumption levels by 2031 with an inefficient use of resources. So predictions are China might need, at this level of inefficient growth, maybe 60 to 80 million barrels of oil a day. They'll have to consume 2/3 of the world's harvest. They'll need 4/5 of the world's meat. They'll need massive amounts of coal, steel, paper, cars, etc. And then if you add India, and the other 3 billion in emerging markets, you can see that this linear growth line is not possible at this level of inefficient consumption of resources. There's just not enough, not possible. So the line will go down. The financial sector doesn't like it when the line goes down. They only want it to go up. So the only way to maintain economic development, which you need particularly in emerging markets, is conflict for resources, which the financial sector likes war, but not too long, or the great investment opportunity ever created, massive resource efficiency, which is what sustainability is about, just doing more with less. And that is the fundamental macro driver, which why all of a sudden the financial sector is very, very interested in this space. They did the math. You don't need to be a Nobel Prize winner to realize that if we continue at inefficient use of resources, and the countries like India or China or Indonesia go from 1 meal a day to 2 meals a day, massive water consumption, logistics, food, etc. So this is really the big driver. This is really what's gotten the financial sector's attention and most intelligent people. Other drivers are, as I said, emerging market resources, their resource inefficiency, wealth holders looking to integrate philanthropy and investment, the financial crisis and aftermath of $325 billion in legal fees and fines. They used to say to me, oh, that ESG is very risky. But the financial sector paid more than $300 to $400 billion in legal fees and fines, cleaning up the mess of garbage investment that they were selling. And actually, they were also ensuring that the investments would fail, which is what Goldman Sachs did. Staff and clients are looking for purpose. I'm sure most of the students that go to your school are looking for purpose. A little bit of regulation, stakeholder pressure, student and employees demand on employers and endowments, wealth management engagement with clients around impact. Because if your interest rates are negative and your returns are down, and you're a wealth manager, and I say, I'm sorry, Kavita, but your portfolio is down 6%. You don't have a smile on your face. Where you can engage with clients is aligning their values and their interests and showing them that the part that they're really excited about, even though it's a small percentage, is on the impact side. So investment that has an alignment with their personal values. Even though it's a small amount, you can engage on that. It might be 1 or 2% or 5%, but that's where they get actual, you can actually engage with the client. You can't engage with clients when their portfolio is down. What are you going to say? You can't do anything about it because the world economy is down and interest rates are down. And the big driver is the financial sector and business is seeing the self-interest and the business case. These are the major milestones that have happened in the last 20 years. Carbon tracker is probably one of the most important development, which I'll get to in a minute. Fresh Fuels 1 and 2, it's a legal research because investors say we can't do ESG or SRI because we have a fiduciary duty to maximize returns for our pensioners. However, Fresh Fuels, which at the time was the largest law firm in the world, they said, well, let's see if there is a law about this. And they found there is no law looking at extra financial issues. In fact, they went further and said fiduciaries that don't look at extra financial risk, like climate, are not fulfilling their fiduciary duty, thus opening themselves up to liability. That was a very, very big, big development. Then the PRI, which started in 2006, the Equator Principles, which addressed project finance, that companies would no longer give project finance unless there was an environmental risk assessment. A Carbon Disclosure Project, which was an agreement that we will look at the carbon risk of the investments that we're doing. But these are aspirational statements. PRI and Carbon Disclosure Project has no teeth because it's just saying, you know, it's like a fitness club. You're a member of the fitness club, but you don't want to get on the exercise machine. But it looks good that you have the membership card. The Montreal Pledge is quite interesting. It's asking asset managers to reveal the carbon risk of all their investments. It's a very important development because it's not about aspiration, it's about showing. What is fascinating is that nearly no American financial institution signed, not even Al Gore and David Blood from Generation, because you could have an ESG fund, but it doesn't mean that it's climate or carbon neutral. I'll go a little bit into Carbon Tracker because this was a very important development. Let me just go back to it. So Carbon Tracker said, okay, let's say we have to stay at 2 degrees, which most civilized people believe we should. How much carbon can we burn to stay at 2 degrees? So they did some calculation. They said about 800, I think it was 870 gigatons we still have left. We can burn. Okay, let's take out how much we already burnt. So we have maybe a 570 gigaton carbon allowance. Okay, remember that figure, 570. How much oil and gas is still in the ground to burn? 2,800. Oh, so I can only burn 500 or 600 gigaton, and I have 2,800. That means 2,200 gigatons of coal and oil I theoretically can't burn. Yeah, but that means it has no value, but it's on the balance sheet. So for the economists listening to this, if you can't take something out of the ground, it doesn't have a value. But if it's on your balance sheet as $40 a barrel or 50 or 100 or whatever the figure is, that means that figure is incorrect. So that woke up a lot of investors saying, oh, the valuation of these oil and gas companies is wrong. Now you see it in the other extreme where there was so much oil that they were paying you to take off oil because they had nowhere to store it. This was a very important milestone because people started to see the value of the oil and gas sector was vastly inflated and the coal sector was just decimated. So you should research that a bit more in Carbon Tracker. If we look at the money flows going into ESG over the years, it's just gone up and up and up. And it claims of $35 trillion now in liquid assets in environmental, social, and governance. So, and that's why nearly every single financial institution is offering this product, and that will increase. You see the green bond market, massive money flows going into green bonds, and also going up. The pandemic is only stimulating that interest because we're seeing if we disregard nature, if we disregard the environment, it becomes very expensive to deal with it. And we're seeing that exactly now. This small virus started in China has just decimated the world economy. However, we just look at if there's $35 trillion supposedly going into ESG, we must have resolved most of the world's problems. We haven't. The problems have only gotten bigger. So how can we have 35 or 40 trillion dollars in green bonds and liquid assets going into sustainable investment if climate change destruction has only gone up, biodiversity loss has only increased, water shortages are massive, you're seeing that strongly in India, food shortages, health crisis, income inequality, pollution, threat of war. So logically, how can you have so much money going into a sector to address these if the problem's only increasing? You can, I think the answer is one, maybe the money is not going into that sector, but there's an exaggeration of what is an ESG fund. Or two, maybe it's not enough. Maybe we need to double down. Or three, which is what I think, maybe the definition of what is an ESG investment is incorrect, that it's not fundamentally addressing the problems of climate, biodiversity, water, food, but it's basically going slower in the wrong direction. So it looks like there's improvement, but you're still going slower in the wrong direction. And that's what I feel. I think we need a much more aggressive approach to address these issues directly, because the model used now is very much analyzing companies about what they report, not what they do. So who scores very highly in the Dow Jones Sustainability Index? BP and Shell, but aren't they carbon intensive industries? Yep. What about companies like PepsiCo, which also stores very high? Aren't they one of the major causes of diabetes around the world? Yep. What about Unilever, which is supposedly a sustainability champion? Aren't they a large consumer of palm oil and toxic cosmetics and processed food, all unhealthy? Yep. So, but they get very high rankings because they report well. You report well, you get a good ranking. That's one of the major flaws of the present ESG system. So is incremental moderate improvement the right strategy? I don't believe so. I think we need a dramatic, radical change, a moonshot. And perhaps this pandemic has given us the opportunity that we need to retool the economy totally, that all investments have to improve society and have to improve the environment and will ultimately give us better returns and lower risk, and not just going slower in the wrong direction by doing less harm. We have to be like doctors taking the Hippocratic Oath, do no harm. It's important that we also have a reality. Oh, there was someone who raised their hand. Am I supposed to stop now? Okay, there's.
Yeah.
Okay, so this, the reality check, which I wanted to share is, you hear lots of, you read lots of press releases, you hear lots of stuff about ESG and Goldman Sachs, and everybody is a great champion, and the head of BlackRock is really going to make things different, and the American Roundtable, the purpose of business is not just money. But unfortunately, the ones doing the most talk the least. And the ones doing the least talk the most. So people, unfortunately, believe the press releases. And they shouldn't. They should question. When you go to university, you're taught constantly question what's being told. Think for yourself. And this is the same in the financial sector. When people put out press releases, I'm going to do this, and Apple computer is going to get to carbon zero by 2030 or 50, what does that mean? Kavita, are you going to call Apple in 2050 to say, hey, I'm sorry, I don't think you hit your carbon target? It's a meaningless statement to say in 2030, 2050. What are you doing today? What are you doing today, and what will you do tomorrow? So there's lots and lots of pressure because everybody now wants to be part of the club of sustainable investment. But nobody wants to dig the hole. They all want to cut the ribbon. We need people who actually do the work and dig the hole. A recent report in February of Share Action, of looking at all of the big world asset managers, and they scored terribly, terribly, even though they were all claiming to be great ESG leaders. But if you look fundamentally of their investments and how they're investing or doing just engagement, engagement is a popular way of in doing ESG investment. So you hire me, Hermes or Robeco, and you go talk to the company. But that's not, you know, if a company is making money, just talking with them, they're not going to really listen very much. The Rockefellers tried for years to get ExxonMobil to embrace renewable energy. They never did. They said, why? We're making more money than anybody else. We have a great health and safety issue. Why should we do this? So just engagement is a very large part of the ESG $35 trillion committed, but engagement doesn't mean that you're changing the economy. And why are you doing this? Are you doing this to make an economy based on well-being? Or are you doing this to tick a box to show, Kavita, see, I'm a good guy, I'm doing this, or I'm part of the fitness club, but I'm not getting on the exercise machine. So we need to be very critical of all of this chatter of ESG. And why are they doing it? And how are they doing it? And why is there so much activity? Carbon has a cost now, didn't have a cost before. And this cost of carbon will only go up. Once we get the pandemic reasonably under control, I have more confidence in Europe and Asia rather than the United States of getting it under control, but particularly with this president. But carbon is a cost, and that will fundamentally change the way business reports. We also have a vast wealth transfer from close to $40 trillion in the United States alone, going from patriarchs to millennials. The millennials are very interested in this. They want profit and purpose. So that's another large money flow, and they're looking for things not only in engagement, they're looking to invest in things that actually make things better, that fix the climate crisis, that address diabetes, that address the water shortage, that address food shortages, that address income inequality. One of the greatest drivers of the financial sector, which is good for your students, is demand for talent. What you see now, if you look at most of the big asset managers, you just see they steal teams from each other because they can't find talent. I used to teach MBA students at the Rodham School of Management and was trying to convince students, if you want to change business, interview the recruiter. Don't do it the other way. When the recruiter comes to see you, find out, does the company represent your values? If they don't work for them. Because if you go work for the company thinking you're going to change it from inside, forget it. It's like scratching with a plastic spoon against the safe. You're not going to get anywhere, but you will get somewhere if you say, I'm sorry, your values don't represent mine, and I'm not excited about a red BMW. And if that happens a few times, particularly at a ranked important MBA or business school like Amity, you can change behavior of companies. There will be massive demand for talent, and there's a big shortage of that. So we're seeing a paradigm shift towards sustainable investment. The decarbonization and how it's going to impact infrastructure. You're going to see more and more investment looking to how do I invest in things that is low to zero carbon. Here are some very simple ways. They're not sexy. Public transport infrastructure is a $2.3 trillion industry investment every year. Every year. If you want a decarbonized portfolio, invest in public transport infrastructure, just simple debt. It's not sexy, it's not exciting, but the community banking system alone in the United States is $2.5 trillion. 98% of all the banks in the US are community banks. People know JP Morgan and Wells Fargo, but most of the banks are small family-owned banks. Secondary market of development finance institution, another great source of energy, fuel-free energy or renewable energy, social stock exchange, and second generation engagement, which is basically investing in the worst of class, in the small and mid cap, and using activist engagement to change the behavior towards sustainability. But investing in the worst of class in a sector where sustainability is clearly material, you can theoretically raise the share price quicker by improving the governance and getting them committed to sustainability. Here are some of the asset classes that will benefit the most. The Empire State Building, everybody knows it. What most people don't know is the owner, the former owner of the Empire State Building, was a speaker at TBLI, Anthony Malkin. He was not a fan of sustainability, but he did the math and he said, wow, if we do the green retrofit of the Empire State Building, which they were the largest green retrofit, $525 million, we can save energy, we reduce our CO2 emissions, our water emission, we can raise the cost of rentals there, and they did it, and it was ultimately, the building was sold for a lot of money. Energy, obviously, India is taking a leadership role in renewable energy, or what I like to call fuel-free energy. Price has gone down so much, there's no point in doing coal-fired power plants at all. Next steps, this is the greatest opportunity in the history of mankind. So zero emissions real estate, either new buildings or retrofit buildings that are net zero, which means they produce more energy or produce no CO2 emissions through the whole life cycle, are much smarter way to go. At the moment, it's not the case, but this is a phenomenal opportunity, and retrofitting those buildings to reduce energy need, which means you won't have to invest so much money in energy infrastructure, is tremendous. Public transport infrastructure, fuel-free energy, carbon sequestering in red plus or blue carbon, which is basically restoring coastal areas to sequester carbon. And the two largest employers in the world. I know India is a very big tech country, but I hate to break the news, but the two largest employers in the world hardly use any tech. It's basically small-scale agriculture and hospitality. It's 1.4 billion people who work in that. very little tech involved. It doesn't get a lot of attention because it doesn't provide 10x returns. But if you're looking to create jobs, that's the area. My wife did a hotel vocational school in Bhutan and is looking to do that also in India to create jobs opportunity. Phenomenal success. 98%, 99% of everyone got a job and a career. Water, affordable healthcare, climate resilient cities, living wage. So the financial sector, unfortunately, are hunters. What we need are farmers. We need to take more of a long-term approach. We've hunted everything. There's little to hunt anymore. We need to restore. What can you do? To paraphrase Yoda, do or do not. There is no try. And my time is up. And if any of you want to learn more, we have 3 international summits coming up for Europe, Asia, and the Americas. Thank you for your time, and I'm here to answer any of the questions. There were some hands that raised up, so I'll leave it to Kavita to organize this.
Thank you very much, sir. It was a brilliant presentation, and you have covered all the aspects so nicely that I think all our attendees who are watching, they are very eager, and there are a lot of questions coming up. Some questions have directly come to me. And Anush, do you have some questions, or shall I carry?
Ma'am, can I take one question, please, if with your permission?
Please go ahead.
Great. So, sir, you mentioned about there's the people who talk more are the ones who do less,
Yes.
who do the least. So,
Unfortunately.
yeah, that is unfortunate. But don't people like? Does it affect their stocks? And don't people see through these organizations, and then they tend to lose reputation and image in the industry? So
True. Long term, that's true, but people are too polite. People don't say, you know, your children are actually quite ugly. You know, I'm paraphrasing that basically what they're doing is not true. People are often not confronted, particularly if they're influential. You know, like Jeff Bezos, the richest man in the world. People really didn't confront him with the fact he doesn't want to pay taxes. He doesn't want to pay a living wage. He's a libertarian, and he only discovered climate change a short while ago and started putting money into it for publicity purposes. I'm sure now he does have some interest in that, but fundamentally it's about what people do, not what they say. So people are too polite. We need people to be more challenging. Your students probably are also polite, but maybe some of them give you a hard time. We need challenging questions, particularly from the large financial institutions, ICIC, Bank of India, Goldman Sachs, all of these. Where is their investment money going? What are they funding? Are they funding social and environmental destruction and benefiting from that? That's a simple question. Where is your investment going? Where's the pension fund money going? If you're saying we're a CSR company because we go on the weekend to help a youth center paint the walls, but all of our money goes to make life miserable for everyone and we increase CO2, what is the point of going on the weekend to paint the walls of a youth center? Your business is money. Where is your money going? Is your money going to improve the quality of life of people in India? If it's not, then that's fine. Just say so. But they won't.
thank you, sir. Thank you. So there's a question from one of my colleagues, VP, Mr. Ashwin Anand. So he's just posted it. So I'll just take that as well, with your permission.
Sure.
So he said, what's your take on ESG investments? Should be made more mandatory by governments all over and businesses, more accountable in their investment disclosures?
I don't think mandatory is necessary because I always kind of relate it to, if you have to go to the bathroom, if I drew a line on the floor, will you go there quicker or will you go because you have to go? I think mandatory will put in a baseline that will be the lower baseline. So if you say you should do this, but at what level and what methodology, I think it's very much about education and pressure of stakeholders rather than government. What the government can do is very simple: make products reflect their true cost. If you I don't know if there's a VAT in India on bicycles, but in my country, there's 21% sales tax on a bicycle. But if you buy an airline ticket, there's no sales tax. Worldwide, no sales tax on airlines. That doesn't make any sense. Why should a bicycle be 21% or 25% or whatever, and an airline no percent, and no tax on kerosene? So if the government wants to mobilize money, just have products reflect their true cost. Because if airlines reflected their true cost, they would not be so heavily subsidized. So I'm not for the mandatory issue of people having to do that, because I think we won't get more, but I am for governments doing policy changes that will stimulate that, because if products reflect their true cost, the investment community can do the calculation. Oh, this carbon intensive business that didn't have to pay sales tax before, now so their profitability goes down. Maybe I shouldn't invest so much in that. That I think is a better approach, and also the education of employees, universities, students. Don't invest your money in things that make things worse. Why would you want to do that? But you don't know that you're doing that because you just, you put money in a mutual fund. That mutual fund invests in tech companies or telecoms or whatever. They don't look at, what is the sustainable performance. It's improving. It's gotten much, much better, but it's not where it should be. You can't have $40 trillion invested in ESG with all the problems going up. Then either that figure is incorrect, which I think it is, or we need to do much more or a different strategy.
Thank you, sir. Over to you, Kavita ma'am.
Thank you, sir. There's another question which our student want to ask, sir. What is the primary driver for your interest in impact investing? And how do you see it fitting into a large portfolio of traditional investments and charitable activity?
Well, my driver is basically, I want the economy to support well-being. That's a personal interest. And I want the financial system to work for all, not just for a very small group of well-connected individuals who can pay lobbyists to support their narrow views. That's the main driver. We're a mission-driven company. We're not a financial-driven company. I think my wife was not too happy with that over the years, but in general, we're there. And the second part of your question was, again?
Yeah, the second part is that how do you see it fitting into a large portfolio of traditional investments and charitable activities?
Yeah, well, I don't see any problem. There is no shortage of investment opportunity. I just listed, green retrofits of buildings, which account for 40% of CO2 emissions, of new buildings, public transport infrastructure, which India has to spend hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars. I don't think India needs more. I think if you're going to invest so much money in road construction, you should put in as much or more in public transport infrastructure to reduce the carbon footprint. So I don't see a lack of investment. I think the investment opportunities are almost limitless. It's a question of, do you want to do this? If you don't want to do it, that's fine, but just stop talking about ESG and SRI so much. Just do it. There are lots and lots of charity. I mean, India is so innovative and has so many foundations that need support. I'm talking about investment because charitable donations only use a very small percentage of your principal. You take your money, you put it in a foundation, you invest it as an endowment, and then you give away a certain percentage to get a tax break. We're saying take 100% of your money and create a risk-adjusted portfolio. But from the list that I showed, whether it's analyzing liquid assets or fixed income or green bonds or real estate or infrastructure or red plus or blue carbon, there's trillions and trillions of dollars or the of opportunity. There is no shortage of opportunity. The challenge is not the convincing. It's very easy. The challenge is access. Mr. Tata does not have a sign on the side of his home. Hi, I have billions, come visit me. You know, so access is the challenge. Convincing is very easy. We've been doing it a very long time.
Right. Thank you, sir. Our Professor of Marketing, Dr. Sandeep Bhasin, wants to know from you that investors are looking for better returns, irrespective of whether or how the company is performing on the ESG factor.
True.
Every, though the government has in a way forced the corporate to spend more on governance,
Good.
we see that these corporate are not doing much other than taking an initiative or two to present their annual report. So I guess it's tragedy of the commons problem. How do you solve it, sir?
As I said, the government has to make products reflect their true cost. If you had a cap and a carbon allowance, which you could do in India because of super high-tech solutions, everybody gets a carbon allowance. If you use your bike or you walk, you could earn credits. If you use your car, you've got to buy credits. These are policy decisions that the government can do, and then you change behavior. But everybody wants to have a small car or a big car in India, and the roads are full. You can't get anywhere, and the pollution is terrible. I mean, we were stuck in we were in Delhi recently. We went through a trip on Rajasthan, which we loved, and we were like 2 hours stuck in traffic trying to get to the airport because there's just so many cars. It isn't built for this amount of cars. So government can do something. However, politicians want to get reelected. So if I say to you, Kavita, it's not your right to travel with Tiger Airways or whatever airline it is for 15 euro from Mumbai to Delhi. And please vote for me. So that is the challenge. You need to take the leadership, have products reflect their true cost, real cost, so with life cycle analysis, what is the carbon intensity? And a lot of the things will fall into place because the financial sector can adapt. But as long as you're not paying for the social environmental impact of your products and services, things will never really improve. I think it's gotten better than, let's say, 10 years ago. I think people are more conscious. People don't want child labor, underage children working in the mines and things like that. So it's gotten better, but it's nowhere near where it needs to be. And if people say, I don't want my money invested in this and I want you to report, it'll happen. But it will go much faster when government takes the decisions that they need to take. I mean, the EU is coming out now with an EU taxonomy of what is a green and sustainable investment. I know that China has been working on that. I'm sure India has been looking at that too. When they do that and they, create a basis, the investment community can adapt. They're very flexible because they only have to move money. They don't have to move factories.
Anuj, would you like to take the question? Yeah.
Yes, yes, ma'am. Thank you. So, sir, since you're talking about sustainability and a lot of green actions that organizations can take, so we have a peculiar problem here in North India, wherein the farmers have leftover husks that are burnt, and that creates a massive kind of haze and smog, and it's a very big pollution hazard. And it really seriously impacts health of all individuals, particularly those of the elderly and the small kids. So is it not like possible to incentivize and have organizations who can work on the solution. And although this has been talked about, it's been happening for a long time, and every year we read about it in the papers. It's only during that time that this gets so much publicity, but it's still not been taken care of. So is there any way to incentivize any kind of, even an international government body or private organization who can solve this problem for us?
Well, there's an Indian gentleman, a third generation Indian who lives in Thailand, who does that. I mean, he's the largest organic jasmine rice producer in Southeast Asia. And his focus are two things. Farmers must make more money. One, they must stay as a farmer, but they have to earn more money and a better lifestyle. And two, there should be no waste. So all of the waste of the rice husk and that are used to parboil the rice. It's all used in a circular economy. So nothing goes to waste. Nothing is burnt, in the field, because it's used as a fuel in a controlled setting. But as long as farmers are incredibly poor and having to borrow money at incredible interest rates from loan sharks and money lenders, and then borrow money for pesticides and things like that, you don't get out of debt. And if you're not well educated and you're in debt, what do? You do what's the easiest for you. So you need to fundamentally look at this in a different way. Make sure the farmers earn more money. One, they have to earn more money, and you have to have educational support in teaching them about not burning in open fields. I think that Ormat, which is owned by an India, second or third generation Indian based in Thailand, shows that you can do that at a large scale. He also did a project with the hill tribes in northern Thailand. So very simple, super simple technology. He went to the hill tribes who were leaving the villages to work on construction site. And he said, here are 140 baby chicks, little chickens. Here's organic grain, what you feed them. This is how you build a chicken coop. And every egg you produce, I will pay you 3 times what you earn being a day laborer. And he sold the eggs, or sells the eggs, to the better supermarkets, the 5-star hotels, the better restaurants, because it tastes good. And the hill tribes have a better income. So not a complex technology, not a big policy change. These are very simple things. You just have to show some leadership in doing that. I think Ormat is a great example. urmatt.com. And Arvind is a wonderful, you can watch his YouTube presentation on our webinar on our YouTube channel. So there's lots of things that you can do. And yes, there are problems, but bad income, forcing people to buy all kinds of chemicals to grow food, low yields, problems of water, bad infrastructure, food not getting to markets. These are very large issues, and it's not just, well, the farmers burn their crops, so they're the problem. Yeah, maybe figure out, maybe they're struggling really hard and they need to have a living wage. Otherwise, you'll have the cities filled with farmers and there will be no farmers. And India will import all of their rice from industrial companies, industrial countries like the United States or Taiwan, and won't have any food of their own. Farmers need to have a living wage, like everyone. Everyone needs it. It's in the interest of all businesses. As long as businesses, whether it's farmers or factories, don't pay a living wage, whether it's in the United States or in India or in China, they have a false profitability. And if they would actually look at all of the things they should be paying, they might not be as profitable and they might not be in business that way. So let's start paying people what they need to pay to have a living wage and educating them so they can see what they're doing and looking at alternatives. There are many, many solutions. India is very, very inventive. one of the most inventive countries I've ever visited. So they can do a lot with very little.
Thank you, sir.
There's a question by one of our international business faculty, Dr. Shanta Chauhan, who also teaches economics here. She wants to know, sir, to fuel economic growth, many a time developing economies make compromises on the quality of investment. These nations can ensure a balance between economic growth and sustainable development, and how sustainable investment can help them in achieving economic growth too.
Well, as I said, I think one of the main solutions is policy that products reflect their true cost. That will fundamentally change things. Things that seem very profitable might not be so profitable. So that's one thing. The fact that carbon is a cost and countries around the world will start implementing carbon taxes, that will also help. That the SDGs have been embraced rather quickly as a new model for measurement. I don't agree at all with people who say we have to, is a trade-off. You know, I can only make money if I abuse people. I can only make money if I exploit people. I can only make money if I have cheap raw material resources. That's laziness. That's laziness. If you could, there are so many examples of companies that invested in innovation and resource material use. But if you're very resource efficient and you run your plants on fuel-free, on solar and wind, you're not paying for the fuel costs. Why would you want to pay for fuel costs if you can get it for free? It's only a one-time infrastructure cost. So we've been brainwashed in this idea we need to have centrally coal-fired power plants. Let's keep putting out all the CO2 that we want. We don't have to pay for it. Someone else, the next generation of children will be living with smog and pollution and climate change risk. That's just very short-sighted. It is a lie to say you cannot have economic development and sustainable development. You have to choose. No, that is a choice that you're choosing, not that you don't have to choose between one or the other. You can have both if you want to, but that's an educational issue. If you don't want to, and you just want to have this very energy intensive, economically inefficient system that underpays all of its workers. So what do you have? You have a very unpopular, large group of people that are suffering. And what do people do when they're suffering and they get a chance to strike back? They strike back. They don't listen. So you're creating a very toxic environment. There's no point in, it's like, you know, winning at cards on the Titanic. You have a seat on the Titanic and you're in the luxury suite, but you're still going down. You're not going to be isolated. So in your own interest, if you want continuity for jobs, for economic development, this is a great opportunity, massive opportunity, and it is not a trade-off. It is only a trade-off in your thinking. And as long as we keep products that don't reflect their true cost, no tax on airline tickets and a tax on bicycles. I'm not sure if there's a sales tax in India, but I'm just saying in the West, most of the Europe and North America, there's a sales tax on that. This is stupid. Doesn't make any sense. It's an agreement, so we can also change that agreement. And why should we subsidize airline travel? They always lose money. Look at what happened. As soon as the pandemic hit, they all went bankrupt. I don't know how many airlines in India went bankrupt because of the pandemic. So they're, after 2 or 3 months of no income, they're so vulnerable that they go bankrupt. So maybe they're not a great investment to begin with.
Right. With this, ladies and gentlemen, we come to the end of such a wonderful interactive session. Now, to conclude this session, I would like to say, with the rhetoric around impact, investing, reaching new heights, Organizations, foundations, and non-profits would do well to keep the following in mind, similar to grants or different forms of non-grant making support. Impact investing is but one tool in the social impact toolbox, which is bound to make a turnaround difference. When impact investments are planned strategically and executed competently, they have enormous value and deliver a scale of social impact that may be difficult to achieve or sustain with other tools. So, we hereby come to the end of this absorbing and enriching session by Mr. Robert Robinson, founder, chairman, TBLI Group. We gained tremendous insight how impact investments can make a full-lasting difference in transforming economies. It's also the need of an hour. Once again, on behalf of all the students, faculty members, I would like to extend a great thank you to Mr. Robinson for coming and gracing with his great experience to us. It is very, very important, ladies and gentlemen, that the world will benefit when economy supports well-being. And with this noble thought and sharing such a brilliant idea on behalf of the entire students, our Group Vice Chancellor, Professor Dr. Govind Singh Sir, my colleagues here, Mr. Anuj Gaurav, and all the webinar support team, the IT support team, which let us go flawless this great event. I extend a warm thank you, sir. It was a pleasure to be associated with you at this platform. Our relations will continue, and once this lockdown get over, we would definitely like to invite, because you're already acquainted about India a lot, but formally we will invite you to India once this COVID pandemic gets over. Please convey my regards to ma'am, and very shortly we will get back to you, sir.
Thank you so much. This was very enjoyable, and if I can help you in any way, let me know. Stay well.
Thank you, Mr. Robinson.
Take care, sir.
Bye.